Know what this is? No? It's called the Ghostlight. Now, superstition says a theatre should never be fully dark. It's bad luck and could mean it actually closes. Like, for good. Superstitious people, actors. Heard about the Scottish play and all that mumbo-jumbo? They really believe it, too. I mean, really, really. And they do all this special ritual stuff before performances. If I told you what I've seen, you'd get me locked up in the crazy house. Now, the Ghostlight is so named because it gives the ghost of the theatre a light to perform by. Every theatre has at least one ghost. Some have enough to cast a whole damn show with a full chorus. It's real important to keep these spirits happy. If you don't, they may take it upon themselves to sabotage your production. And when a production has problems, it's big trouble. But you see, the theatre ghost is also a blessing. He or she is often as important to the show as, well, the stage itself. No ghost, no atmosphere, no special energy. You know the thing that happens when you aren't just watching actors on a painted set anymore, when it pulls you in and it all becomes real. That there's the power of theatre. Spiritual energy contributes to that magic. Of course, you still need great actors and sets and directors and stuff, but still, it's a contribution. Of course, another use for the Ghostlight is to stop people tripping over the set and taking an unexpected dive into the orchestra pit. Mostly that's worked. Except for this one time. Judy was here. She was drinking. I mean, in her dressing room. I hung out there a bit. I thought she might see me, but she didn't. I don't like to bother people. I don't pick up their stuff or anything. That's not my vibe. What was I saying? Oh yeah, this guy took a header into the pit. I can't remember if the light was actually on. He didn't die, though. An ambulance came, got him on a stretcher. He was out cold. I heard the others say afterwards he was in a coma. Don't know if he ever recovered. You know this was a movie theater, right? And not a theater. It's been a few things, actually. Movies, then musicians. Lots of musicians they played. Well, I think you call them gigs, if that's still the right word. Language changes so much. There were some great ones, and some you could barely even call musicians. For the past few years, it's been musicals. Which is cool because I do love musicals. Oh, that's Ellie. And smell that? Yep. Beer. Or to be more accurate, porter. They used to brew it in Philly. Now, I loved beer from the first moment I tasted it. And tobacco. And whiskey and rum. Don't get me wrong, that wasn't why I left. Or perhaps in a way it was. I'm what's called naturally curious. I'll try anything once. I used to drive Oma crazy with questions. Even when I was 5 years old. She was my favorite. Would I have left if the influenza hadn't taken her? Maybe not. Opa would say I deserve what happened to me. Who knows? Maybe he's right. I don't know how long we've been shut down this time, or how long this light has been burning. Obviously, I'm not here 24/7. I check out and go somewhere else, and then I come back. I usually come around in the stalls first. A couple of times in the middle of a show, and once, just as a woman sat down in the seat. It was pretty dark, and I don't think she could see me. But she sure felt something. Jumped up like she was bit by a bear. You know, I think it may actually be the end of the world. And the really crazy thing, I mean really biblically crazy, the show that was here just before the big quiet, a show about a pharaoh. Who'd have thought? Not that I've seen water actually turning to blood, Or, a million frogs. There have been more rats about in the streets, too. Maybe God got sick of frogs and sent rats this time. I am waiting for the 4 horsemen to put in an appearance. I think disease, or pestilence, is what we're calling it, is already here. When the people started to come back into the open, lots of them were wearing masks, like they were afraid to breathe the air. I would stand at the front and watch them, and try to understand what the hell was happening. I mean, the stores across the street are open. They weren't for a while, but they are now. Yet they only let a few people in. And us? I mean, this building was open all the way through the Blitz, bombs dropping all around, never closed. Now I keep hearing this word, COVID. Another thing? The church is gone. We used to have a Pentecostal church in here every Sunday. I would assume, with the end of days on its way, they would ramp up the worship. But apparently not. It's a real shame because their singing was almost as good as that in the shows. Maybe everyone just gave up on God. Or perhaps Jesus has finally arrived for the second time. Although if he has, you would expect folks to be happier. I've asked Ellie about it, but she doesn't know. She says it's never been like this since she got here. Ellie is older than me. I mean, she is actually still in her teens, but she's been here longer. There was this huge flood of beer. Like hundreds and thousands of gallons of the stuff came roaring out of a brewery when their tanks broke open. This area was flooded outright, and Ellie was here then. I know it destroyed the pub she worked at, but she doesn't really like to talk about that job. I get the impression her life wasn't good, and that she was being chased, or more like hounded by the guy she worked for. He wanted, well, you can guess what he wanted. Turns out he paid. After the flood, Ellie made his life hell. Drove him mad. Now he did get put in the crazy house, and she gets to hang out there. This beer flood is a big thing. So you get a woman, some kind of actress. She does these talks for the tourists. Oh, of course, she was before this, whatever the hell this is. Ellie doesn't care about her, but she says she misses the singing and the leading men. Here's a fun fact for you. The contents of your pockets stay. That's why I still have smokes and gum. Kinda wishing I took Travers up on his offer to borrow the flask. Still, I hope he will be enjoying it somewhere. Maybe in an orchard, if he didn't go on like me. I don't know why some of us stay. When I was like you, in the world like you, I was told the stories around a campfire. I was with Aaron that night, and I had s'mores for the first time. Do you even have those here? I really hope you do. The world shouldn't end without you trying s'mores. Surely God would never be that cruel. And hey, even the horsemen would like a s'more. Well, except maybe famine. It's not like they say. No bright white light. Unless you count the explosion. I was on the sidewalk. Well, what was left of it. Looking at burning and rubble and dust. I was running for the subway. Or maybe I wasn't. Really. Either way, I didn't make it. Did you think I was still alive-un? That's what Ellie and so me also call you. Live-uns. Really, it's live ones, but Ellie has kept her accent. As have I, obviously. Now, I pride myself on looking solid. I think it's important. Nobody is going to take you seriously if they can see right through you. Of course, that is, if they can see you at all. Why some people can see us is a mystery. Some people may hear us, but not see us. Some can only smell us. With Ellie, it's the beer, and I smoke too much. But then what's it going to do? Kill me? Then there are the live-uns who have absolutely no idea we are there. I was one of the last types, whereas Aaron, he saw everything. He just generally kept quiet about it. There in the old barn, I'll always remember the look on his face. Real, honest-to-God terror. And he just shot off out of there. I caught up about a quarter mile down the road. He was still throwing his guts up. I had to get him home. He lived with his aunt by then. His mom and dad left after his brother was born. They took him, little Moses, as he was still a babe in arms. Just upped and left for Indiana. Said they would write when they were settled in a community and would send for Aaron. But they never did. You can probably tell by now that I learned a thing or two about religion growing up. After I left, I used to tell people my father was a pastor. Saved getting into it all. I'm not ashamed of who I am, but the endless questions and having to always explain everything, it wears you down. Travers knew. I told him. He was the only one. Man, I miss him. Perhaps I miss Aaron too. But he would have gone on. Peter would have flung those gates open wide for a soul like Aaron's. Travers used to say that St. Peter, being the first pope and all, would probably get another padlock fitted when he was on the way. Travers has the same attitude as me when it comes to religion. Except for him, it was Catholicism and the priests who beat him. I guess that's one of the reasons we got along. We both ducked out of Sunday services. Maybe if I had gone and prayed more, I would be in heaven with my Oma and Aaron. Not here. Personally, I think I was damned the moment I enlisted. My people, you see, don't fight in wars. Never have. We, or I guess they, follow what's called the Ordnung. It means order in German. That's what we spoke too, a type of German, only it was actually called Pennsylvania Dutch. Of course, we also spoke English, especially kids of my generation. Looking at me now in my GI uniform, you would never guess I was once a straw hat wearing old country style farm boy, driving a horse and buggy, helping raise barns. No electricity, so of course, no movies or theater. Drinking and wild behavior would get you shunned. I should have been baptized into my community at 17, definitely married a year later. Nice little wife and lots of kids. That's the Amish way. Only for me, that was never going to happen, because I fell in love. I knew from the moment I admitted to myself that's what it was, I knew I would have to leave and make my way in the American world. For a time, I had hope my love would come with me. For a time. I've been thinking of my people much more since we started the quiet. I wonder if what's here is with them too. Of course, Opa will be long dead. Aaron too, I guess. But what I really mean is the congregation. Has my community survived? I don't know why this is so important to me. I mean, when I left, it was really no longer my fellowship. That's the rules. I got blind stinking drunk that day. Slept in a ditch on the way to the new farm I was going to work at. Hey Ellie, you want to come say hi? Sometimes she can be shy. Other times, she doesn't care. The girl will pop up in all kinds of states, usually in the leading man's dressing room. She does love her leading man. Unfortunately, she has scared the hell out of a few of them over the years. There was one she was particularly fond of, who got fired for drinking. He wasn't, of course, but the understudy could smell Ellie, who was pretty much camped out in the dressing room. The sneak reported Ellie's beau to the producers. That understudy lasted about 3 weeks as the lead. Ellie made it her personal mission to get rid of him. I heard he quit acting altogether. Like I said, you don't want to upset the ghosts. You know how I said some theaters have many ghosts? Well, here, it's just Ellie and me. Ellie died in the 1800s, but started hanging around here while it was being built. She died a little way behind the stage door as far as we can make out. I didn't die here either, you know. Yep. It actually happened just up the road. It was February 18th, 1944. The sirens were already going when I left. Little Mike yelled at me to get the hell down to the shelter in the basement. He tried to grab me too, so I socked him. Still have the bruises on my knuckles. He went down and I was out the door. I always could pack a punch. I could hear the people running before I got out onto the Tottenham Court Road. They were the stragglers. By the time I hit it, there was nobody. The searchlights were sweeping the sky, and for a moment it seemed so beautiful up there, those sweeping arcs of light. I lit a smoke and watched them until an ARP screamed at me to run for the shelter. The running didn't help me, of course, though I could always haul my ass when needed. The favorite memory I have of Aaron is him chasing me full tilt through the long grass of Farmer Baylor's second field. Of course, I let him catch me. My legs were longer than his, so I had to fake trip and fall. I kissed him there for the first time that day, and we lay naked in the grass for hours. By the time we spent that summer, our Rumspringa, together, I had been in love with that boy for 2 years. Now with Travers, it wasn't quite so romantic, and of course I wasn't nearly so young or innocent, but it was still love. Real, honest-to-goodness love. Love of more than a lifetime, as it turned out. 1943, January. I was sitting at a table in a jazz club in Soho with a couple of WAAFs. Oh, that's the Woman's Auxiliary Air Force. Nice girls. They wanted to be flying nightingales, if I recall. We were having drinks. He came up and asked if he could sit down. The girls were okay with it, so I said sure. We all did the usual intros, names, where we were from. I provided smokes, and Travers ordered a bottle of champagne. At first, I thought he was trying to impress the girls. I had kind of a reputation with the WAAFs. I mean, a good reputation. I was known to be generous with the drinks, and not to push for anything other than a kiss at the end of the night. They put that down to my father being a pastor and super religious, and that worked for me. Man, those girls was something. Beautiful and vivacious, confident, funny, and brave. I love spending time with the WAAFs. If I was ever going to have to marry a woman, it would have been one of them. Of course, they will all be gone now too. Their kids will be grandmothers. Funny how time gets away from you. I hope this bulb isn't going to blow. There is a guy who comes in to check from time to time. He puts down rat poison and makes sure we haven't had a break-in. Every time I hear that door unlocked, I pray it means we will be open again. But so far, no. Now, more than ever, I wish I could go out. Maybe walk to one of the other theaters and see if they know what's going on. I can't get out. I can go as far as the awning over the front doors, and out back a little way. It's not like you hit a wall. It's gradual, like wading through running water in the creek back home. Steadily, the current makes it harder and harder to move forwards. You get pushed back and you don't have strength to fight it anymore. I spent hours down by the creek during Rumspringa. You know what that is, right? I guess you don't unless you're ex-Amish too. Basically, we have to make a decision to join our community as an adult. That means we commit to following the Amish way of life, the religion, and the special rules, such as no buttons. Not kidding, look it up. All of it, marriage and kids and everything. Before you commit, you are encouraged to go and experience the world. You get to hang out with other kids and even venture into the local American town. See, if you want to stay Amish, you have to know that's what you want to do. If you don't want to, and you leave, you can't go back. Ever. You have no contact with anyone. You are pretty much alone. That's why most people stay. I just couldn't. It hurt too much. So I left to work on a local farm. Did that for a couple of years, but by then I was sick of farming. From there, it was the bright lights of Philadelphia. I started as a busboy in one of the clubs down K-Mac Street, and then made it to bartender. I reckon I could still make you a mean white lady, except you wouldn't run the risk of going blind from the bathtub gin. Prohibition had ended 6 years before, but our boss still made a lot of his own spirits. Kept the cost down. Maxine's was my favorite bar on that street. It was a gentleman's club, and catered to everyone, including guys like me. During that time I made friends, took lovers, but in the back of my mind was always Aaron and his betrayal. By the time I got to London, I had spent a lot of time in bars, but nothing prepared me for the traditional London pub. I wasn't a fan. The ones I found were yellowed with smoke and stank with sour, stale beer. Dark in a drab kind of way. The patrons ranged from young and nuts to old and scary. That included the women. Everyone was looking for a fight, except some of the women who were there to make a buck around the back. Don't get me wrong, I have no problem with that per se, but they were old and harsh, or very young and scared. Those young ones were always watched over by some guy. Sometimes, if I had cash, I would take them around the back, pay them, and we would chat for the requisite time. It gave them a break, but I heard some real sad stories. The Blitz was brutal. Whole families lost, and these girls were doing what they had to just to survive. So when Travers said we should go and get a drink after we said goodnight to my WAAFs, I wasn't so sure. I remember everything, as if it happened only yesterday. He winked at me and said, "I promise you'll have fun." And I did. I really did. Sadler's Creek was our place during the summer. Noah, John, me, and of course Aaron used to build camps there when we were kids. It was still our place during Rumspringa. John was the boldest of us all, and he invited the American kids to hang out with us that night. There were 4 of them. 2 girls with a lot of lipstick. The guys looked younger. It was awkward at first. Noah had some cakes from his mom, and our guests had brought the ingredients to make s'mores. It was the girls who pulled 2 demijohns from their bag and set them with the other stuff. Now, after the first jug was empty, things get a little hazy. I think Noah had passed out by then. He and one of the kids had downed a lot of the moonshine real quick, trying to outdo each other. When the sickly sweet s'mores hit their stomachs, they were finished. Both had puked their guts up and were now sleeping it off. A delighted John had been pulled into the bushes by one of the girls. That left our last 2 guests, who were making out under a blanket. Aaron grabbed me in the last jug and we snuck away. The Black Cat, or to give it its correct name, Au Chat Noir, was about as far away from one of those depressing pubs as you could get. When we got inside, I was shocked. At home, we were careful, or maybe discreet is a better word. There were, of course, places, but nothing so overtly homosexual. A vision with scarlet hair and nails swept up to our table and kissed Travers full on the lips, leaving more than a hint of lipstick. That person smiled at me and told Travers how flexible he found GIs to be. I felt myself blushing. Travers put his hand on my knee and told me to ignore it. That was just Quentin. I took a gulp of my pretty decent brandy and decided, when in Rome. So I asked Travers if he wanted to maybe head outside into the alley. Quentin laughed and sauntered off. Travers kissed me then for the first time. A soft and lingering kiss. He told me to relax and take it steady. We would be heading back to his digs as soon as we finished our drinks. You know, I don't remember lipstick being anything other than red. I guess there must have been other colors then. Now there is every shade under the sun. And how do I know this? Ellie. As I said, I don't take people's stuff or move it. She, however, does. And her weakness is lipstick. By now, she must have thousands, and I mean that, literally. I even think she has one of Judy's. Poor Judy. When she was here, it was pills as well as booze. She wasn't the happy girl who sang about rainbows. Of course, Amish girls don't wear makeup at all, not even for their Rumspringa. The night of the s'mores, Aaron and I sat under the tree in Baylor's second field and started in on the last of the moonshine. We were pretty far gone when Aaron said he could feel something wedged into the tree trunk. Turns out it was someone's secret treasure. A powder compact, a lipstick, and a bottle of scent. We both started to guess which of the girls had been so bold as to buy these. Then Aaron started messing about with the lipstick. I told him to quit, but he put some on and asked me if he looked like a pretty girl. In that flickering candle lantern, he looked more like a clown. I told him so and wiped it off. It was then he said it. It came straight out of nowhere. I love you. I just stared. He kissed me hard and whispered it over and over. At some point, one of us kicked the rest of the moonshine into the tree trunk, but it didn't matter. You know, I would think that I could at least get back to my death spot. It's away up the street. I knew immediately the bomb hit. It didn't hurt, or at least I don't remember it hurting. I sort of came round and saw my foot, which was no longer attached to my leg or anything else. It was away in the road. I didn't look for the rest of me. I walked into this place and sat on the steps in the lobby. I needed to take a moment. When I enlisted, I never thought about dying or killing even. I never got round to it. Killing, I mean. I learned to drive on the American farm shortly after I left home, and I loved it. After basic, I was assigned to a colonel as his driver in London. I knew I was lucky as hell. Travers was stationed at an airfield in Kent. He didn't fly, but he did something with maps that was all top secret. A couple of times I borrowed a jeep and drove down to see him. He loved orchards, said it reminded him of home. Mostly he came to London, at Auchannois, where we hung out with true bohemians. There were the guys who were for sale, women who dressed and talked like men, and men like Quentin, who wore more makeup than most women. There everyone was free. Our nights were spent at his London digs. His elderly landlady never asked any questions. I guess she needed the money. Also, she was pretty deaf, and possibly senile. So perfect for us. If there was a raid, we would pack the landlady off to the subway, and we would stay under her dining room table, guarding the house. I nearly told him I loved him, right there. The sirens were screaming, so I would have had to shout it. I was just gearing myself up to it when he looked at me, smiled, and handed me a note. It said, "I do too, but being English, we don't really say it. We will have to think about where we will go when this wretched war is over." I wrote on the back of the note. It said, "I would like to go somewhere warm that doesn't have fog." Back then, London was always foggy. Lancaster County didn't have fog. It would have mist if you were out early enough. My first hangover was the morning after the s'mores. Neither of us knew about hangovers. That was our first alcohol. Farmer Baylor found us and had to convince us we weren't dying. He thought that was hilarious, but kindly got a cart to get us back to our homes. Despite feeling sick, I was also on cloud 9. Aaron said he would come with me. I started planning that morning. In 6 months, we would be free. Travers was the planner for the two of us. He had already worked out that we could live well on his allowance in North Africa. The places he talked about sounded like something out of a fairy tale, and despite my caution, he sold me on the happy ending. Rationing was part of our English life by then. Man, I hated those powdered eggs. I wrote to a bar in Philly, and for Christmas we got what Travers called a tuck box. He cooked for us. The landlady was at a sister, so we got to spend the day together. I still found it odd celebrating on December 25th rather than what we call Christmas on January 6th. We exchanged gifts. I got Travers a flask. He got me this lighter. Ellie and I love Christmas here too. We can watch the shoppers from the lobby. The church does lovely carols, decorations go up, the shows seem extra fun. I wonder if we will even have it this year. The other big holiday in America is, of course, Thanksgiving. That's when we would leave and take up our new jobs on a nearby American farm. Aaron and I had been careful about meeting up. We would spend a bit of time in a rundown barn on the edge of Amish property. It was at the end of October, Halloween, as I now know. I was lighting a candle lantern, and he asked if I believed in ghosts. I really didn't think much about the answer I gave. I think I said, sure, but I had never seen any. He was as pale as one when he turned to me and said, I've been seeing Opa. And Opa is our name for a granddad, and Aaron's was terrifying. I wonder now if that was part of the reason his parents moved to another Amish community. All of the kids would run when they saw him, and I know he beat Aaron with a belt one time. He had died 3 years previously, and was not mourned. I didn't believe him. I told him he was mistaken. It must be some other old guy. Where had this happened? Aaron said it was around, and it was always just out of the corner of his eye. I was already undressed and lying on our blankets when Aaron said it had happened that evening on his way here. Knowing everything I know now, it was a really dumb thing to do, but I just wanted Aaron to stop with the craziness. I stood holding the lantern and said to the space in front of us, if old Petersheim is here, I command he shows himself. I think the lantern flickered, but it didn't go out. I could see Aaron's face. You've heard of a mask of fear? Well, that was it, as he stared up into the hayloft. Then he ran, straight for the door. It took me a while to get dressed and run after him. I almost had to carry him home. He was sick in bed for the next 3 weeks, and I had no idea what had happened. I told Travers about Aaron. I could tell he wanted to ask, but wasn't going to push. In return, he told me about a boy at his boarding school. He seemed very matter-of-fact about it, like a lot of the boys there fooled around. I asked him when he knew that he was like me. He said, always. Had I always known? I don't think I had. There were passages in the Bible about it, but that didn't seem to relate to Aaron and me. We were in love, so what we did was a way we showed our love. I see the actors who come through here, and a lot of them are like us. They seem so open and confident and happy. Perhaps if Aaron and I were born later and in England, it would have been different. But then I never would have met Travers. Nothing would be worth that. The showdown, and it was a real old showdown, happened just before Mary Glick and our friend John's wedding. Around Thanksgiving is wedding season for the Amish. John had forsworn fun with American girls, although he thought the experience would help on the wedding night. Aaron's aunt brought a note over from him. He asked me to meet him at his home, a couple of hours before the service. I hadn't seen him since the night in the barn, and I had missed him. When she opened the door, I knew something was wrong. We went into the parlor, and there they all were. Aaron sitting on a chair in front of a group of our elders, all stony-faced and all hanging onto their Bibles for dear life. He couldn't look me in the eye as he told me I had to confess and ask forgiveness for the things I had made him do. I had to tell the elders how I plied him with hard liquor, and then when he was morally weak, I had taken advantage. I had swayed him with base gratification, and in a way 2 boys were never meant to know each other. He, Aaron, was going to forgive me. Mary Glick's sister Rachel had helped nurse him, and they expected to be married before the end of the season. Stunned is an understatement. Have you ever had your whole world swept away within a few sentences? I really hope you haven't, and I pray with what's left of my tattered soul that you never do. I left. Just walked out and kept walking right off Amish land. I stopped by the stash of moonshine I knew the American kids kept and helped myself. And that was the end of my Amish life. You would think that having something happen once would prepare you if it happens again. But nothing ever can. I had driven down to see Travers a couple of days before, and I drained the last of the brandy out of his flask. He laughingly told me I should borrow it, as I obviously needed it. I really hope he refilled it before. I was hanging around our offices with Mikey on that evening. We had heard rumors of some daylight raids on towns by the coast, but didn't think anything of it. Word was coming through a raid was on the way. I was collecting stuff we would need in the basement shelter, like smokes and gum. Mikey answered the door to the courier. It was him who handed me the telegram. I think that's why I hit him so hard. It was kind of shooting the messenger. I just really hope he got back up and made it to the basement in time. By now you will know what the telegram said. It was one of my WAAFs, stationed at the same Kent base. There had been a lightning daytime raid, and a direct hit on his building. He was gone. I threw it away, that telegram, and I'm so grateful I did. Imagine having to keep that in your pocket forever. Its damage was done, though. My life stopped right there, and not when I actually died. I came around with Mikey screaming and pulling at me. Then, as I said, I was out the door, walking calmly to the main street. I think I did attempt a bit of a run, but my heart wasn't in it. It was a relief when the bomb hit. How could I have gone on without him? So that's the story of an ex-Amish boy who fell in love, was betrayed, enlisted, and came to Blighty, as Travers calls it. Then of course he fell in love again, lost his love, and got blown up. That's a pretty eventful life for a guy who never expected to leave Lancaster County, PA. I know this doesn't make up for a theater show with songs and sets and a proper script. It's a rambling tale of memory. Perhaps when you come back next, maybe when you're getting a drink in the downstairs bar, you will look for the young GI just visible on the edge of the crowd. If he is lucky, and I mean really, really lucky, he will be with who he is waiting for. A handsome Air Force officer sipping from a silver flask.